This modern ornate office tower of glass, stone, and steel is known as the 100 East Wisconsin Building. The land in which it's located, at Water in Wisconsin, is one of Milwaukee's most historic sites. Our first skyscraper was here, built in 1891, and it's the spot where our city began. Milwaukee's name and modern history begin with the Indians who lived here and a trading post. Built in 1822, on land we now know as Water in Wisconsin, by French-Canadian fur trader Solomon Juneau. Juneau, who became our first mayor, is one of three men usually named as co-founders. He apparently had no intention of founding a city here, but with a push from a Yankee lawyer and developer named Morgan Martin, his Juneau town east of the river became the heart of old Milwaukee.
That became kind of the downtown of a metropolis through no fault and through no intention of Juneau's. He was, at least there is some evidence, that he was, if not dismayed, at least not impressed that this area was kind of on the forefront of the frontier hordes who were moving here from the East Coast.
Engineer, surveyor, and land speculator Byron Kilbourne came here from Ohio in 1835, platting Kilbourne Town from the area of 3rd and Chestnut on the west side of the river. Today's angled bridges are a legacy of the pioneer rivalry between the two, as Kilbourne refused to align his streets with Juneau's.
And I think part of the reason for his desire to stay separate was not only personality, but also the fact that he thought Juneautown was isolated in this little sliver of land between the river and the lake. He had no room to grow. He looked west to the Mississippi. There was no limit to the borders of his empire.
George Walker also arrived in 1835 from Virginia. With a vision of his own on land with the most potential for harbor development, Walker set up his trading cabin at a spot near today's 1st and Pittsburgh streets. But Walker's Point had its problems.
Not only was it Walker's lack of finances, but even more importantly, his claim was jumped by some Green Bay speculators. And it took him roughly 7 years to clear his title to that land. By that time, the torch had passed, to Juneau and Kilbourne. So if it hadn't been for what was basically a legal problem, 150 years ago, 160 years ago, National Avenue might be Wisconsin Avenue, where Milwaukee Tech is. That might be the First Star Center or City Hall.
Our melting pot of settlers grew quickly, and in 1846, with the permission of the territorial legislature, the three communities united to form the city of Milwaukee. In less than 10 years, the flood of immigrants, 2/3 of them foreign-born, raised Milwaukee's population to more than 20,000. We've marked a number of milestones along the way: 75 years a city in 1921, the 100th anniversary in 1946, with its theme of saluting yesterday, challenging tomorrow. Now Milwaukee at 150, commemorating the past, looking forward to the future. With First Star fireworks and a City Hall open house on New Year's Eve kicking off the Sesquicentennial, Milwaukee begins its year-long observance. We'll be celebrating who and what we were over the past 150 years, the strengths and opportunities of the present, and the promise and possibilities of the future. As part of the anniversary, city artist Jan Kotowitz has designed special artwork, which is to be used for official marketing and promotional efforts. The anniversary is to be a cooperative effort between the city and the private sector, and the city will be entering into agreements with various retailers for use of the city trademarks. One of those companies is Brew City Beer Gear. Working with the city, co-owner Frank Kepler also designed another sesquicentennial graphic. It will be used for shirts, hats, and other merchandise. Beer City will also cooperate with other marketing efforts.
I feel that the awareness of the city, the history that the city has, the neighborhoods, the ethnic diversity, all ties back into its history and what's going on, how the neighborhoods developed and things like that. And so I think the Sesquicentennial not only involves tourists and other people's outside awareness of what the city is, but the people that live here, the residents, and what their knowledge of the city is.
Among other planned activities, you'll be asked to contribute to a promotional campaign to name 150 great things about Milwaukee. Things like,
for its size, it's one of the cleanest cities in the country.
I'm 64 years old, and I've had a lot of chances to move elsewhere, and I've been exposed to the Las Vegases and the Californias and all the glamour places of the world. And I got all through with it, and I looked at little old Milwaukee, and I said, it just fits. It just fits for me. It's the right place to live.
Well, it's a decent place because it has a future. It's a future for minorities as well as for the majority, of course. And since the minority is increasing in terms of population and in power, I think it's a good challenge, positive challenge, and I'm still here.
One of the things I especially enjoy about Milwaukee are the parks. They have a large variety of parks. They're very clean.
I like the city of Milwaukee because they have a lot of different malls and different communities. The people here are very friendly. They have nice schools to attend.
the community has an essential role to play in celebrating the 150th birthday. Planners hope to see the Sesquicentennial theme used for many existing events, such as the city's River Splash and our ethnic festivals. It's hoped that all the summer festivals will take part in the Sesquicentennial in some way, since the ethnic diversity of our community is a fundamental theme of the celebration. A recognition of the contributions of all ethnic groups, from our earliest inhabitants to our most recent immigrants.
One of the things that makes Milwaukee unusual is that we have not only an impressive variety of ethnic groups, but no single group has tended to have the upper hand, to be dominant. Although Germans are the largest, this is by no means just a German town. Although Yankees were influential early, this is by no means simply a WASP town. Everyone has a role to play here. And you look at the ethnic festivals in the lakefront, there are now 8. So you can spend most of your summer weekends attending parties down at the Meyer Festival Park that members of one group throw for all the rest of us. That says something. That says something about the role of heritage, the role of diversity, the role of culture broadly defined in the life of the Milwaukee community that I think makes us unique in the country.
Most City of Milwaukee property owners can expect to find pleasant news when they open their 1996 tax bills. The city did its share to lower the bill. The rate for city purposes is $10.53 per $1,000 of assessed value. That's 33 cents per thousand below the 1995 rate, accomplished with no general reassessment of property.
I think the council and the mayor need to be commended for the work that they've put into this budget. They've lowered the city's property taxes by slightly over $4 million. There's also been a cut in the rate. I think important changes with respect to the Department of Public Works and its reorganization. I think it's a very solid budget. I'm glad I was part of it. I think they need to be commended for the tasks and their efforts. Good stuff.
Remember, 5 local governments are represented on your tax bill. The city gets about 1/4 of your property tax dollar. The remainder goes to the public schools, Milwaukee County, Sewerage District, and Technical College. Altogether, the combined rate is over $1 per thousand below the 1995 level. Because this was an off year for a general reassessment, the lower rate means the bottom line will be lower for most property owners. These are several examples of the reduction from the current tax bill, a figure that, of course, depends upon the assessed value of your home. You might not know that most of the money to pay for city services does not come from the property tax. Residential and commercial property owners account for only a fourth of what is needed. State aids provide nearly half of the operating budget. Where does the money go? Public safety accounts for 40% of your city budget. Public Works gets nearly a third. Health, general government, and other programs round out the list of services covered by the budget. The city budget adds 10 new police officers. In the last 7 years, 272 police positions have been added in the effort to build a safer Milwaukee. The Department of Public Works undergoes a major reorganization in this budget. There was some concern over what that might mean for the services provided by the department. But even with the reorganization, officials say essential city services will not be affected.
I have no doubt about that. I believe that we have a tradition of delivering high-quality services, and increasingly we're doing that at lower cost, and I believe we're going to continue that tradition. At no point did we believe we were going to jeopardize the delivery of any of those services. And in those instances when we had some questions, my staff, the mayor, and the Common Council, those questions were raised, and many of the changes that you saw in the budget that were made by the Common Council and the Finance Committee were an attempt to provide kind of an extra level of insurance that those services were going to be provided.
It's the city treasurer's job to collect the property taxes. Paying by mail would be easier than standing in line, but you can come to City Hall and pay in person if you feel more comfortable doing that. City officials say the 1996 Milwaukee budget maintains a high level of service at a reasonable cost to taxpayers, and they add the tax rate in a city is important to its overall economy.
And we think that over the past 7 or 8 years, as we've lowered tax rates, we've had not a major impact, so to speak. It's not the same thing as having a major employer arrive and create 5,000 or 6,000 jobs. But we think over that period of time we've created 2,000 to 2,500 jobs. And we think that our ability to cut taxes now will, at the very least, help keep a few hundred jobs and perhaps more in the city economy.
With the ink hardly dry on the new budget, planning will begin for the 1997 version with the usual challenges.
Well, as always, I think the challenge is to be able to review what we're providing as a city, to be sure that it's being done as efficiently, as cost-effectively as possible, and to be sure that fundamentally we're adding value to the economy.
For years, people have questioned the Mitchell Street pedestrian mall concept, which had seemed like a good idea in 1975. The attempt to compete with outlying shopping malls brought wide sidewalks, narrow roadways with no on-street parking, and large concrete park-like areas which blocked access from side streets. All that has changed. Mitchell Street has been significantly altered once again with a 5-year, $1.5 million public and private renovation project. From 6th to 13th, Mitchell Street has been widened and repaved. There's more access from side streets. Over 100 parking spaces were restored to what was once one of our largest neighborhood shopping districts.
We're trying to make it as attractive as possible, and you don't have the monotony that you do get with the major shopping centres, where you get into any of them and after a while they all look the same. They got the same anchors, the same kind of stores. Mitchell Street has got a very diversified mixture of shops.
Some businesses are already reporting an upswing in traffic. They sense a positive trend, a trend that will make shopping a more friendly experience, return investment to the street, and reacquaint people from throughout the community with the diverse population which lives around Mitchell Street.
They're a very diverse group of people, so we can cater to the, 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 the different cultural people in the area and the ethnic mix is great, and it's something that just makes the place very colourful. You know, people go on vacations in Europe to see this kind of colour and think it's quaint, and there's no reason why they couldn't come to Mitchell Street, and it's just as quaint and just as pleasant. And there is no other street, I don't think, in Milwaukee County that exists as anywhere like Mitchell Street, as anywhere near as attractive, and where the mixture of shops are so diversified.
On the north side, historic Brady Street has also reinvented itself once again. The street has been improved. There's additional parking. That project, the result of a $1.4 million public and private venture, preserves much of Brady Street's unique charm.
I think as the association has been thinking about what kinds of things can we get to have folks come back to the neighborhood and become more involved, be more interested in establishing their businesses here, I think our first step was just renewing the street physically. And so this past summer, the street was repaved. We got new sidewalks. There's an art project. As you travel up and down the street, you'll see the art project on the street. Installed wonderful new harp lights. It kind of restored some of the character. The European flavor, I guess, is almost what you think about it. It's more of an urban edge, I guess what they'd call it. The businesses are on the street edge, and I think that's what makes Brady Street unique.
There's a lot going on in addition to the street work. The expansion and remodeling of existing businesses, renewed interest in the Brady Street area by new business, new families, and current residents.
There's a significant increase in neighbors being involved with their neighborhood, and whether or not the renewal of Brady Street had anything to do with that or not, I'm not sure. I like to think that it has, but we're hoping that Brady Street gives them a focal point, someplace that they can come back to. I think that it can be a booming place like it used to be. I'm hoping that we can get some additional services so that the folks in the area really don't have to go out to shopping malls. They can shop here on Brady Street.
And in an area of downtown, there was a bit of disorientation as some traffic patterns were altered. City crews took down some do not enter signs, unbagged some new streetlights, and changed the one-way flow of North Van Buren and Jackson streets in November. Van Buren and Jackson from Kilbourne to Ogden were created as one-way streets for good traffic engineering reasons at the time, but those sections are now two-way streets. The city believes the conversion will help visitors find their way around, make it easier to find parking, and provide better access to their destination.
We've been studying all the one-way streets in the downtown over the period of the last few years and looking at trying to convert as many as possible. The idea in mind is to try and make downtown more convenient for people to use, particularly for the residents that live in downtown and the merchants and the businessmen that use downtown to improve the commercial activity and the accessibility to downtown.
It's also now easier to park in other downtown areas. Parking has been restored to a section of West Wisconsin Avenue after 6 p.m. and on weekends. More spots are planned for the avenue east of the river. On-street parking near the Central Library has nearly doubled with the conversion to angle parking. Since 1992, the city has created nearly 1,000 new on-street parking spaces, the equivalent of a major parking structure. And officials say they will continue to look at ways to have streets serve a variety of functions, not simply moving traffic to the detriment of other worthwhile uses. If you've ever attended a meeting of the Common Council's Utilities and Licenses Committee or seen one on City Channel 26, you know much of the work deals with police reports on license applications.
The Milwaukee Police Department recommends denial based on the applicant's entire record. This is a new application that's before this committee for a Class D operator's license.
Sergeant Finto.
Chair of the committee, this is a new application for a Class D bartender's license. Police Department checks based on the applicant's court conviction and record.
Private citizens can also bring their concerns and objections to the committee. State law authorizes the Common Council to grant licenses. The committee has oversight responsibilities. Only a small percentage of the thousands of applications have serious problems, but the city feels the background checks are necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. The License Division on the first floor of City Hall advises council members on licensing matters. It also manages license operations, issuing an average of more than 30,000 per year. A license to 10 bar is one of the most popular permits issued by the city. There are about a dozen different kinds of liquor licenses covering bartenders, taverns, liquor stores, and numerous types of beer sales.
A tavern applicant comes in and files an application. One of the first things that's done is there's a police check. And there is a desire to make sure that somebody's going to operate a tavern, that they don't have a long criminal record, that they don't have a conviction record for prostitution, commercial gambling, things like that that we don't want taking place in taverns in the city.
Drivers of taxi cabs, handicap vans, limos, and shuttles are also required to be licensed, again for your protection.
As far as the drivers are concerned, the police check is done to make sure that, for instance, people sometimes will send their children in a taxi cab. We want to make sure that the person that's driving this taxi cab and is licensed does not have a conviction record for, say, child molestation.
Another area of concern, home improvement contractors, required to get a license because of some dishonest aluminum siding salesmen a few years ago.
They were coming around door to door to the public and having people sign contracts, pay money. The work was never accomplished. We've got what we call people licenses. And samples of those licenses would be bartenders, the public passenger vehicle drivers we talked about, the home improvement contractors, salesmen that would come door to door, direct sellers, the vendors that you see out in the street selling Summerfest tickets outside of the grounds, sunglasses on Wisconsin Avenue. Those are all people. And for the most part, their checks would be the police department checks. When it comes to the second classification, we would call those premises licenses. And when we get into an actual premises or a location, we're talking about buildings or grounds. So in those areas, building inspection is an important key, and many of those licenses also include health department inspections as well as police department. So that's the second category. The third category is vehicles. We mentioned taxi cabs and handicap and elderly transporters. We also have licensed garbage trucks and snow plows, things like that. When it comes to the vehicles, then we get into such things as inspection of those vehicles, their safe vehicle, and also there's usually insurance requirements to make sure that if the public are riding in a taxi cab and there's an accident, that everybody is properly covered.
License renewals are usually handled by mail. New applicants should stop into the office.
And they would usually start by asking questions and find out what licenses they need. And then we supply the person with applications, and we have thorough instructions of the different procedures for that particular license. We put it into a computer system. As I said before, if there's objections to a license, and it's one of the many licenses that would require a public hearing in front of the Utilities and License Committee, the next step would be that hearing.
The License Division is not the only city agency which has a license function. The city's Dial for Action directory or the regular white pages have specific information.